I think that one of the quickest impacts that it has is that it's democratized news sourcing. Previously, news was really much officialdom. What the pandemic gave us was a chance to go into our communities and tell stories from our communities because our reporters couldn't come to office and go back home in time. So we were asking them to stay at home and work from home. And that allowed us to get a lot of community news stories coming to the TV screens. I think that the other thing that it has also offered us is introspection as the media. We've been running a media model economically that doesn't work, and it's been said that the media is dying all around, all across the world, and the pandemic has offered us that time to introspect and say, is this a news model that we can work with? Maybe we need to change our models. Maybe we need to do something different, and that's now what we're working on, being able to deliver content to people faster and quicker and in the ways in which that they appreciate it. But also I think that the pandemic has offered us a chance to hold government to account. Previously, the interaction between government and the newsrooms was once a month, twice a month at most. Now, because of the pandemic, we have almost a daily interaction with government agencies, and holding them to account is one of those things that the media is doing currently. We work in a news organization now. The news as a business has changed fundamentally. There's new news events and developments almost every minute. So being able to follow up on news stories and even contextualizing those stories is a hard one. And I think that what it's going to take is going to take just basic attention from media houses. Media houses have to sit down and say, these are the stories that we're paying attention to, and this is why we need to pay attention to them. And one of those stories is really the COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll have a great deal of work to do in terms of follow-up, but also a great deal of work to do in terms of patience and paying attention to the things that matter. I think that the greatest opportunity that has showed itself in this pandemic is delivering news in unique ways. And many news organizations have had to do that. Finding unique ways every day to do your job as a journalist has had its own impact on our audiences. Being able to do, for example, entire shows from my home, being able to shoot promos, have interviews, package a whole show from my home, that exposed me to a whole new way of doing the media business, but also exposed me to a whole new level of interaction with the news as an entity. And I think that the other great opportunity that this pandemic has brought with it is collaboration. More than ever now, newsrooms are collaborating. International news organizations are working with local news organizations to be able to get news stories from here and relate with the rest of the world. Because the pandemic has just made us realize that we are one world. I think that many media organizations have paid attention to their reporters' health in terms of sanitizing, having masks, what places do you go out, what stories do you tell, when do you tell them? Media has largely avoided crowded events and crowded organizations and crowded places so that they don't infect their own reporters. But again, media is really a life of sacrifice. If a story is where the problem is, then definitely some level of sacrifice is taken to tell some of these stories. And some of our own people have actually suffered the COVID-19 virus. They've been in hospitals and come out. So the basic investment in terms of public health has been done, but there's more to be done. But also, it's a catch-22 for us because a lot of sacrifice has to be done, and that sacrifice has to be done by reporters. There's no one who was prepared for the pandemic, and the Ugandan media is no exception. The pandemic really hit us hard. It came as a surprise. Of course, it had started in China and got to Uganda almost 4 months later, but we hadn't been prepared for it. We also not prepared for the level and scale of government response to it. So for example, the lockdown, we were caught flat-footed on how to be able to source news stories. When government instituted measures on curfew, we didn't know how to bring in guests at night. We didn't know how to do news stories at night. We also didn't know how to transport our staff and team. So it was really, it caught us unprepared, but we were lucky we responded to it as fast as we could. Always be prepared to take chances. I didn't know for a fact that I'd be doing a show from my home for almost 2 months. It was just when it hit, when the opportunity presented itself, I was prepared enough to do it and I was ready to take the risk doing it. Experiment with the things that you have at your disposal. We could easily have said, you know what, let's cut out the 9 p.m. news because we can't be able to pull it off. But being able to experiment with the things that we had at our disposal and bringing those experimentations to the public helped us in a way to tell the news. So be able and be ready to experiment. But the third and most importantly, just hold the vision. Hold the vision.